Hello, I'm Karla McLaren on the Zoom webinar program, and I want to share with you a brand new book that's out by me and my co-author Janja Lalich, PhD. It's Escaping Utopia, and it's about 65 children who grew up in cults, got out, and started their lives over. I also grew up in a cult, and my co-author Janja and I have worked together on research projects before and on research studies. And this is, I think, our third time working together. With Escaping Utopia, Janja did pretty much an international study of 65 children who grew up in 35 different cults. And these are adults now. So she got to know their stories and how they lived when they were in the cult, how they got out. For most of them, they got out with nothing. They got out with no support, no help, and some with just the clothes on their back and no money. So they escaped, right? They left Utopia. And the reason we call it Escaping Utopia is almost all cults, well, let's say all cults, develop their concept of a utopia. Their way of doing things is the best way. And something that's wonderful about Janja, she's an internationally known cult expert, and she has developed what is called the bounded choice theory or model of how all cults work. And the reason I loved this bounded choice model is because as a cult survivor, I saw that the things that were going on in my cult, which was a New Age healing cult that started back in the 70s, a lot of the things that went on in my cult were wonderful and hopeful and meaningful. And they offered so much to so many of us. And so the idea that cult members are, out of their minds and not capable of functioning and not able to think, I think is kind of a dangerous thing to believe, because what that means is that cults can only prey on those of us who aren't aware. And what Janja points out is that cult members they're very intelligent. They have a tremendous sense of justice. They want to change the world. And they look around at the world that we have and feel there's got to be a better way. There's got to be something better than this. So it's not that they are particularly vulnerable because they're weak. They're vulnerable because of their strengths and their vision and their wish to help. And sadly, cults grab all this and turn it into a disaster. But another thing that's really important about Janja's bounded choice model is that she points out that every possible group that you can have, including a small group like a family, has these aspects of bounded choice involved in them. A group can't develop cohesion without these aspects. And so as we wrote the book, I decided to take 6 people who Janja had studied and change their names for privacy and change some of the facts, right, of how you could identify them, but keep the story the same. So we have 6 main narrators: Matthew, Joseph, Lily, Samantha, Jessica, and Iris. And they grew up in different kinds of cults. There is a martial arts cult. There is the Exclusive Brethren, Transcendental Meditation cult, and the Fundamentalist Mormons, who are called the FLDS, which is Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, plus a couple of other cults that you may not have heard of. And what we look at is how their lives were the same, because cults are human groups. They are totally based on human needs and human behaviors and human cohesion behaviors, right? There's nothing like alien about these cults. And with Janja's 4-part bounded choice model, we then went to each of the pieces of bounded choice and brought in the narrators that you already met and had them, took a piece of what they had said about it to help you understand exactly what that means. And I want to show you the bounded choice model because it's so simple, and just give you an idea of it. So these 4 things are present in every group, and in every very cohesive group, and in every social structure. And they are a transcendent belief system, which doesn't have to be religious or spiritual. A transcendent belief system is our beliefs are better than anybody else's beliefs, right? So we talk about, there was a business called Enron that pretty much destroyed the California energy market. And they had a transcendent belief system about their way of selling things and buying things. And they quickly became a cult, and people could not talk or challenge anything that was happening. And the whole thing, blew up in 100 ways and just destroyed so many lives. But a transcendent belief system doesn't have to be spiritual. The other is charismatic authority. So there's got to be someone or some idea up there that is so compelling, so seductive, and so fascinating that people sort of glom onto it. So you could see, let's say, a cult member, Rajneesh. Rajneesh was made into, this massive God figure rather than just a guy who liked a lot of Rolls Royces, right? So there were a lot of ways that he could do no wrong. And he became, you were to put him and his ideas above yourself. We can see that in abusive relationships. It doesn't have to be a charismatic religious figure. For instance, in Enron, it was the upper management and Ken Lay, who was sort of the Uber boss. So he had a charismatic authority. It was sort of like, be like him. And you can get that in, high school cliques. You can get it in sororities and fraternities. You can get it in, military situations. So it's not something that's special to a cult. And I think that's what's so important about the bounded choice model that Janja developed is there's a cult isn't a special human group, but it is an intense human group, right? So these are involved in all cohesive human groups. The others are systems of control, number 3, which is ways that you control the group to keep them organized. So that might be actual punishments, rules and regulations. So in my cult, all the women had to wear dresses of a certain length, and they couldn't wear pants, and their hair had to be a certain way, and you couldn't have sex if you weren't married, and that sort of thing. So those are systems of control. We also had to eat a certain way. It was very focused on perfect eating. And so if you stepped out of that, first you were breaking a rule, so that was going to be no good. But you were also breaking away from the group mind and this connected group where we all do the same things. So these rules and regulations started to take on a life of their own, so that nobody had to go and say, hey, Karla, you need to eat the perfect food. I had internalized that. And so in systems of control, you are, if it's done well, people will internalize the rules and regulations. You see this in healthy groups too, right? You see this in schools and families where everybody begins to understand, okay, you don't yell, in the classroom, or you don't hit your sister or something like that. So rules and regulations are normal parts of healthy social groups, but in cults, the systems of control become absurd. I mean, why was a group telling me about my sexuality, my dress, and my eating behavior. That had gone too far. But by the time we got into it, it was sort of like nobody could say this has gone too far, right? Anything where people are wanting to control your body, your sexuality, your eating, your clothing, your money, it's a cult. If it isn't a cult, it's heading there. All right. So just make sure if you go to a group and they're wanting to have their hands and their rules, their regulations all over you, step back and take a look. And you can use Escaping Utopia to take a look, because at the end of each Bounded Choice chapter, we actually have a checklist, right? We have a checklist to say, if you are in a group and they have systems of control that are problems, right? This is what you might see. And so, we ask you, check this. Here's the systems of control. The system of control is undemocratic and does not allow for independent thinking. Public shaming of or abuse of rule breakers is used as a scare tactic to keep other members in line. Leaders or members in the inner circle can break the rules without any consequences. That's a big thing. And then right next to that is, here are signs of healthy systems of control. And this is true for each of the 4 aspects of bounded control. So the system is democratic and a healthy system. All members have a say in how the rules and regulations are developed and implemented. Members appreciate the sense of structure and discipline that the system provides. It doesn't crush them. The group encourages critical thinking and welcomes ideas from outside the system. An important part about the transcendent belief system, which is number 1 in a cult, is that no other ideas are any good at all, right? And the people outside the cult are at best confused and ignorant, and at worst, they're evil, right? They're evil and they're unwashed and they're unclean and they don't know what they're talking about. And they're not going to be saved, or they're not going to go to the next level of Ken Lay's amazing Enron, destructive sales behavior. The people are just sort of, they're rubes. They're not who we want around us, right? So part of getting a cohesive system is closing in the cult, closing in the group, and having everybody outside of it be a problem or even enemies. And in destructive and damaging cults, having them be the enemies also means that you could kill them, right? So there have been death cults, like the cult that poisoned people in the Japanese trains. They were definitely a cult, and they had decided that the people outside the cult were ripe for murder, so that the cult could move forward with its great transcendent belief system now, right? Another thing that would be a sign of a healthy system of control is the system supports equality and no person is above the rules, right? So in each of these bounded choice dimensions, we have signs that you can look at for any group or relationship you're in and find out what is going on. So with systems of influence, which is the final aspect of bounded choice, you have your rules and regulations, right? That you dress this way, you eat this way, you don't have sex, or you do. You bow to the leader, you do 100 ablutions, you pray this many times, you have to sell this much, that kind of thing. Those are the rules. The systems of influence are the ways that those rules are implemented. So it could be shaming of people, punishment, shunning is a huge one. Threats of being excluded or expelled from the group, those are huge parts of systems of influence. It is like social pressure. And everyone begins to apply it to each other. There's also, in most cults, there's what I call ratting out others. You think on others because their lack of discipline and cohesion is dangerous to the group. So you rat them out, even if they're your children or your parents, right? You rat people out. in order to maintain this system of influence and control and authority and this belief system, right? So in a cult, after a while, people begin to control themselves, and they begin to utilize systems of influence on themselves. So they will begin to shame and stop themselves from doing anything that the cult doesn't believe in. At that point, the cult is in pretty good shape. It's pretty strong. The cult is pretty strong. I don't want to say it's good, right? But it's in a pretty strong shape, because now people are not only ratting on each other and spying on each other and enforcing the rules on each other. Now people are doing it on themselves. So then a cult kind of gets steam under it, and it can move on and get larger and develop stronger and stronger systems of bounded choice. So I love this work, and it's so important to understand that all of these aspects of bounded choice exist in healthy groups as well. And so you can look and see, what does a healthy group with a transcendent belief system look like, right? And it doesn't have to be religious or spiritual. You can be the smartest people. You can be the people who understand science the best, right? And that can be your transcendent belief system. What it means is it transcends above all those other, unwashed, bozos. We're the best. So most groups, when they develop, they're like, yeah, we're the best, we're cool. If you have a charismatic authority figure, it could be your ideas are charismatic, or you're actually focusing on a person, right? The person who's the most correct. You can have this in families. You can have this in a relationship of two people where, you really look up to someone. And again, you can check and see, what does a healthy charismatic authority figure look like, right? Systems of control. All social groups have to have rules and regulations, right? They have to. So what do healthy systems of control look like? And again, what do healthy systems of influence look like? So Escaping Utopia is a really good book for people who have, like me, survived cults. And you can go in and say, oh my gosh, I did not realize, what? That was a cult behavior? Oh no. And you can start sort of unwinding from this social control method that has been applied to you. And it's also a book for anybody in any kind of group that they're having some questions about. It's like, is this group healthy? And it could be your workplace. It could be your family. It could be, a yoga or a knitting group that's all of a sudden getting very, very, very too cohesive. There's too much togetherness. Then we're starting, look at politics. Oh my word, politics right now, on the left and the right, are really severely cultish. And by that I mean there's incredible cohesion, us versus them, and those guys are evil, and no, these guys are evil, no, those guys are evil, and our ideas are the only ones that matter. So Escaping Utopia is, I think it couldn't have been a better time. We started writing this years ago, before this current really problematic, unhealthy, toxic cohesiveness started happening on the left and the right in America. But I think because Escaping Utopia says cultic groups are human groups, then it's not as if you have to have been in a cult to be able to pick up this book and go, let me look at the group that I have and see. And one of the things that we suggest in these chapters for Bounded Choice is, if your group is veering toward toxic cohesion and us versus them, and we're the cool people and they are rubes and bozos and they ruin everything and we're awesome, you can ask, is this where we want to go? And then make suggestions. And if the group says, no, now we hate you, then you will have some good information about where that group wants to go. And you can make your decisions and find a group that can do systems of control and systems of influence and charismatic authority and a transcendent belief system in a way that's not toxic. It it is not only possible, it's done every day. And I think if I had understood any of this, if my family had understood any of this, I could have saved myself a lot of years of sort of pointless suffering. I went into the cult when I was 10 and got out when I was 17. And when I was 17, I was on my own, and I spent a number of years homeless, rootless, trying to make sense of my life that had been sort of torn apart by this toxic group that didn't have to go that way. So if you have been a member of a cult, this is a great book for you to go, oh yeah, it's slender, right? We tried to make it as quick and easy as possible, give you as much information without overwhelming you, because the stories of many cult survivors are just, wow, it's just bad. Sometimes I would come away from the research and have to sort of lay down with a cold cloth on my head and say, do humans need to survive anymore, really? Is this good? But then seeing these kids, these children and teens who got out, rebuilt their lives, and in the most cases became strivers for justice in a way that is healthy and admirable. So this book is for them, it's for me, it's for you, it's for anybody who has questions about the health of their relationships and their groups. So Escaping Utopia is available through Routledge, and underneath here I will give you, because you know me, I will give you a 20% off discount. Thanks so much. And Janja is traveling right now, and I'm going to do an interview with her soon. But I got the book, and it's so exciting. I just had to show it to you. So talk soon. Bye-bye.